You're wondering whether you should buy Ethereum or Bitcoin, then this video is for you, especially after Ethereum undergoing a change in consensus mechanism, how they go about keeping track of where all of the coins are distributed and the new coins that are coming into the ecosystem, right? They just went from proof of work to proof of stake, dubbed the merge by all of the hype people. And so we're going to look at a few different things in this video. One, proof of stake versus proof of work. What are the claims of Ethereum being better for the environment are true, and do they matter? And we're going to look at the store of value that these coins have had over time. So let's just talk about the money to start, the store of value. You know, most people think about any of these coins as a trading pair against the US dollar, but they don't really think about the US dollar and how much value or how that has stored value over time. So like if you pull up a chart of the purchasing power of a dollar from, let's just say 1913, like your great-grandfather's day, if your great-grandfather had $100,000 and stuck it under a mattress and flash forwarded to today, you got a hold of that money, that $100,000 would have lost like 99% of the value, a significant amount of loss in purchasing power, right? Because we know that $100,000 back then could get you like a mansion on the beach, and today it'll get you like a nice car. Like, it's gone, right? You can't even, it's a regular house. You can't even buy a regular house in middle America for $100,000 anymore. The dollar itself has been going down in value over time. Now, a lot of people have a very short window of their time horizon, so they'll be like, oh, well, Bitcoin lost X percent of value. Like if you look at it today compared to November, obviously it doesn't look that great. But if you look at it compared to when it first came into existence, you know, in 2009, when the first block was mined, the Genesis block, it was going for less than a penny. And now at this cycle's low, or maybe it goes lower, who knows? But right now it's trading for like 19,500. It's gone up thousands and thousands and thousands. I think it's even in the millions of percent. It's gone up a significant amount against the dollar. The dollar has lost over all that time tremendous purchasing power against Bitcoin. So in that same way, you got to look at how all of these coins have performed since inception against Bitcoin. Like right now, today, one Ethereum token will trade for 0.068 Bitcoin, right? At the peak, one Ethereum token traded for 0.15 Bitcoin. That was 5 years ago, right? That was in 2017. So today Ethereum is trading for half actually of what it was back then. And that is the real chart you need to look at. If you're looking at any coin, it's what does it trade for against Bitcoin over time? And you'll see a pattern. They're all going to zero. They all trade for less today than they did yesterday. Same is true for Terra Luna, which collapsed, Cardano, XRP, Polka, any coin, you name it. It spikes a little bit around some hype. Usually some VCs are pumping money into it, and there's like a marketing campaign going on, and people are buying, and then everyone dumps. They dump on retail, and retail is their exit liquidity, and they run off with the bags of money. So that's the first thing that you should consider, the store of value. Ethereum has performed terribly against Bitcoin. One Ethereum then is half. It has half the purchasing power against the Bitcoin, you know, compared to what it does today. The next thing we'll look at is the proof of work for Bitcoin, right? The electricity use, right? It's what is the problem that it's solving? Like how much electricity does Bitcoin use relative to what? There's been these articles saying one Bitcoin transaction uses as much electricity as a house. So it's going to cook the planet with CO2 emissions, and it's just illiterate nonsense. So first of all, like what is the alternative? Money is an incredibly important part of society. Like without money, then like we go back to the barter system, right? Things fall apart very quickly. Money is half of every transaction. And so the alternative before Bitcoin was fiat, the legacy financial system. How much electricity does JP Morgan use? How much electricity does Bank of America, Royal Bank of Canada, Bank of Montreal, Wells Fargo, all of the banks combined, right? How much electricity does the Federal Reserve use across the world? And that is the comparison you should make. And then I'd say you should probably take it a step further, because the electricity that Bitcoin is using is like protecting it. It is a force in cyberspace. That means that you cannot go in and just change it. No one can hack it, right? You can't just go in and arbitrarily change the ledger because of the electricity that's being used, because of the way that it's set up. And so the way that the dollar is protected is through the military. So the real question is, how much electricity does Bitcoin use compared to how much electricity the banking system and the military uses? How many gallons of, I don't even know if it's oil or diesel or whatever's going into the tank, but to drive a tank 1 mile, how much CO2, how much fossil fuel is being emitted? It's certainly much, much more than the Bitcoin network. And so Bitcoin is actually the environmentally friendly alternative to the current system, which is backed by bloodshed and just military might. And I'm going to give you an example of how the US dollar is backed by bloodshed. So it's called the US petrodollar because I don't know if you know this, but countries had to trade oil in dollars. So if you have a country with another currency, you got to swap your currency for oil, and then you got to settle the transaction in dollars. And Gaddafi in Libya was going to basically throw a wrench in that system. And so what he was going to do is he was going to dig gold out of the ground in Libya. And Libya has a ton of natural resources. And he was going to mint an African dinar. And Libya would have become one of the richest countries in the world overnight. And he planned on taking the gold that his country was very rich in and going to countries that have oil and trading directly without using the dollar. And this would, of course, threaten the power that the dollar has on the world stage. And that being unacceptable, whatever propaganda came out about him in like the early 2010s, 2011, whenever it was, I think by 2012, like we had overthrown Libya and we killed him. And now you can go to Libya and you can buy a slave in a market, right? I can buy a human being for like $500 in Libya because of just the nature of the dollar, because of what needs to happen for the dollar to become or to remain powerful. So Bitcoin is peace, baby. You got to choose Bitcoin. If you love humanity, if that's your vibe, it's a no-brainer. I don't want to kill kids around the world just to support the value of my economy. That's fucked up. The next thing that we'll look at is, a little less heavy. Proof of stake versus proof of consensus. Proof of stake versus proof of work, right? So proof of work is basically like, think about like going to the gym, right? If you have a fit body, if you're fit, you're putting the right foods into your body, you're putting the right things into your body, and you're doing the right thing. You're going to the gym, you're going for a run, you're exercising, and it shows, right? Someone who's eating fucking McDonald's and French fries all day and sitting on the couch all day cannot have the body of someone who's working out 5 times a week, who's eating right. Like, that is proof of work. You cannot fake it. I cannot pay someone to work out for me. And that analogy applies to Bitcoin. Like, the electricity that goes in to the computing power of the miners, the machines that are looking for the solution to the problem, the computer problem, to put out the next block, cannot be faked, and it cannot be changed, right? You can't just go in there and mess with it unless you amass a huge amount of power, which is a very big problem for governments that would want to go in and change it. But with proof of stake, you're basically recreating the system that we have now. It is a system for the rich, by the rich. And unless you're a gajillionaire, it is not in your best interest. Okay, Ethereum may appeal to people who, like, they want to be inclusive, maybe they've got the purple hair. You see a lot of those people going over to the Ethereum camp. They have no idea, though, that they are just recreating the same oppressive system that we're currently in, right? There is censorship at the base 1 layer with Ethereum because of proof of stake. Unless you have 32 Ethereum tokens, which today I guess is $32,000 worth, you don't get to play. And obviously the more you have, the more that your voice matters. So obviously the rich people have more, the corporations have more. And those corporations like Coinbase are subject to US laws. So like they have to censor transactions that violate whatever US has sanctioned. You know, just maybe a year or two ago, MetaMask, you know, one of the major wallets, was censoring transactions in Venezuela. Now, Bitcoin has been a huge part of everyday Venezuelans saving themselves from going absolutely destitute, right? Their currency collapsed under the dictator, and they were able to use Bitcoin to survive. Now, imagine someone saying, oh, your transaction's not approved because the US said so. Fuck that. Okay, Bitcoin keeps on mining and keeps on chugging along, and you can process your transaction whether you're in Venezuela or you're in North Korea or you're in Iran. It is politically agnostic. Ethereum is subject to the whim of the banking class, of Western civilization, right? JP Morgan has a huge stake in Ethereum. So proof of stake versus proof of work. I personally would rather participate in a system where there are rules known to everyone and no one can change the rules, including you. Proof of stake is a system where the rules are able to be changed, but not by you. You know, there's already precedent. Vitalik has changed the supply multiple times. Do you even know how many Ethereum tokens are out there? Exactly, because you know how many Bitcoin tokens are out there. So these things loom. Like Ethereum being the world supercomputer or whatever is just a propaganda narrative to get you to buy that instead of Bitcoin, to make the wrong decision. And lastly, proof of stake being better for the environment. Well, I'll tie it into what I was saying before. Like, what are we comparing this to? Like, we are looking for something that is censorship resistant, that can store value across time. So not only does Ethereum not store the value across time because the supply keeps changing and a bunch of other factors, but it's also not censorship resistant. And on top of that, all of the computers that turned off because they're not mining Ethereum anymore, they didn't just disappear. Like, they're just mining something else, or they've gone back to being video game computers. So there's no like less compute power because Ethereum became a proof of stake consensus mechanism. That's just a nice narrative that's told to get people who believe certain things to buy into it. But if you're looking to store value over time, if you're looking to not go broke, if you're looking for a system that exists outside of the system that has not done well for most people over the last 10 years, over the last 20 years, right? Like, you want Bitcoin in your life. So in 2022, if you're thinking about Bitcoin versus Ethereum, buy Bitcoin. Save in Bitcoin. Thank me later.